Welcome to Bharati 100, a podcast dedicated to exploring the life and legacy of Indian national poet C. Subramania Bharati, 100 years after his death. This is Meera T. Sundararajan, the poet's great-granddaughter. Civilization is the taming down of man by woman. Men, indeed, have till now been trying, with scant success, to civilize one another by means of the sword and the bullet, the prison cell, the gibbet, and the rack. But it has been the lot of woman to have no other weapon than fables, parables, and symbols in her work of civilizing man. These words were written by Bharati in an essay called The Place of Woman. Today they seem incredibly appropriate, almost unbearably poignant. We see the sword and the bullet in action, the implements of torture and coercion, the symbols and tools of masculine aggression gone awry. Civilization, Bharati implies, has come up and been built in spite of these forces, has struggled to overcome them, and has done so with some success, perhaps by a hair's breadth of success. Perhaps the archetypal victory of good over evil is always just by a hair's breadth, so fragile. No matter what, civilization prevails, culture develops. The human creative drive is so powerful that it overcomes all. But at what cost? By what sacrifice? There is another way, he says, a subtle way, a patient way, through the tools used by womankind in her work of civilizing the world. And a few paragraphs later, Bharati makes a remarkable statement. He writes, "Where woman comes art. And what is art, if not the effort of humanity towards divinity?" To me, this is one of the most interesting and provocative statements that Bharati ever made, and that is saying a lot. Is there another writer or thinker anywhere in the world who has drawn such a close association between womankind, femininity, and art and culture? As a person trained in Western arts and literature, I am much more familiar with an ambivalent attitude towards womanhood from this community. Dare I say it, a history of hostility towards womankind. In modern India as well, womanhood has faced tremendous repression, and it is no accident that she has been systematically excluded from intellectual life, from literature, from the sciences and the arts. How then can Bharati make this claim, this outlandish claim, that women are in fact the chief standard bearers for the arts and culture and for civilization as a whole? As a woman of the 21st century, I find myself passionately interested by the claims that Bharati is making. It is not enough for me to accept and admire these claims as a matter of rhetoric. I need to know the reasoning process behind them. I need to understand their justification. Because it is clearer to me today than anything has ever been in my entire life that we are standing at a moment of civilizational change, when it is our choice whether we as a species will continue to go forward and build civilization, or whether we will succumb to our own destructive urges. The poet assures us that where woman comes art. Let him explain how that is the case, and Bharati being Bharati, that is exactly what he does. In doing so, Bharati sheds light on his understanding of spirituality, of religion, and even literature. The explanation that he offers ultimately is a poetic one. He writes, "I don't mean to say that man had not the major part in the making of spiritual symbols and creeds, but I do mean to say that everywhere these symbols and creeds are upheld and preserved more devoutly by woman than by man. The mere historic personalities of Rama and Krishna, Buddha and Christ, which, by the way, have been seriously doubted, every one of them, do not, even among the faithful, count for so much as the mythological or spiritual examples. A Krishna or a Buddha, who was once a great man or an incarnation or what you will, but who since has become as dead as Alexander the Great, ought not to mean much for anyone. The object of men in adoring these examples is that they must also try to live like those heroes. And it is towards this realization that woman has been striving far more strenuously than man. The symbolic, the imagistic, the mythological. These are the dimensions in which the lives and legends of great heroes, even religious heroes, are important. These stories, these illustrations of culture in action, inculcate us with a sense of morality, a sense of beauty, an appreciation of the vastness and subtleties of life. The process by which these stories, these histories, these biographies are sublimated into this higher matter, are transformed by this mysterious alchemical process into the precious essence of culture. This is the process that Bharati has been talking about all along, the civilizational process in which he sees women taking a leadership role. From the reading of a children's story to the worship of a resplendent deity, this is how womanhood takes leadership. She is the one who develops these symbols and who infuses them with meaning through her actions and her life. Layers of storytelling, of poetry, of myth-making, of devotion bring beauty and meaning to every moment of human life, enriching our lives immeasurably with the precious essence of culture and of civilization. This is what makes us fully human. Above all, Bharati situates this cultural enterprise, fragile yet unbelievably persistent, in opposition to domination by physical force. Might is not right, right is might, he writes. The question, therefore, that the masculine sex has to answer is this: will you forego the rights of your physical might and liberate woman of your own free choice? Or will you go on tyrannizing the age-long sufferer, woman, until the gods send more of their wrath onto poor earth? Anyone who knows anything at all about C. Subramania Bharati, even someone who knows practically nothing about the poet beyond his name, will usually know one thing about him, and that is that he was a champion for womankind. This, I think, is absolutely as it should be, because Bharati's support for womanhood and his belief not only in the equality but indeed the superiority of women over men, as illustrated by this essay, was one of the pillars of his personality, his character, his thinking, and of course, his writing. And as we have seen, his belief in the leadership role that women should have in society was based on careful and cogent reasoning. At heart, au fond, as he would say, his rejection of women's subordination was a rejection of violence, a total disillusionment and disgust with the predominance of violence in human affairs, with the offering of violence and what he saw as over-aggressive masculinity as a way to justify the state of the world and a force driving world affairs. In his rejection of violence, he turned towards women to find a source of inspiration, an alternate historical narrative, and a different vision for what the future of the world could be, different from the bloody past. It is also very important, I think, to point out that Bharati not only espoused these ideas in theory, but he put them into practice in his own life, in his own home. Tellingly, he writes in this essay, "Nations are made of homes, and so long as you do not have justice and equality fully practiced at home, you cannot expect to see them practiced in your public life. Because it is the home life that is the basis of public life, and a man who is a villain at home cannot find himself suddenly transformed into a saint the moment he gets to the councils or the courts of justice." In this sense, in the sense of attempting to raise up the women in his own household, Bharati also faced a sort of gargantuan task in its own way. He had married his wife, Chalama, when she was just 7 years old. He, of course, was a mere 15, and this was the custom of the day. The children would be married, and it was a custom that Bharati was deeply opposed to, the idea of child marriage, and he has written about that elsewhere, condemning it. His own wife had not had the benefit of education before she married the poet. Bharati therefore took the task of her education into his own hands in a profound sense. He taught his wife his own poetry, not only the words but also his manner of singing it. And it is through Bharati's poetry that Chalama largely had her education. Her mind was completely infused with the remarkable words and ideals of the poet. She memorized most of his poetry. My mother says all of it, but that is difficult even for me to believe. Bharati encouraged his own daughters to become educated. He assured them that literature was their duty, their profession, indeed, their birthright. It is no accident that the poet's elder daughter, Thangamal, became a writer, and she carried on with this activity throughout her life, notwithstanding the tremendous pressures that she faced in a society that was still very much against the advancement of women. Bharati's granddaughter became the first person in the family to study for a doctorate. These were the values that Bharati espoused at home. This was his idea of modern womanhood, women who were educated, empowered, independent, and who attained leadership positions in society. They were women who enjoyed freedom in all aspects of their thinking and in all aspects of their lives, yes, even sexual freedom. They were women who understood the responsibilities of freedom and discharged those responsibilities effectively. This was the seed of women's freedom that Bharati planted at home, when he taught his poetry to his wife and daughters, when he encouraged his wife and children to welcome visitors of the house, giving them water to wash their feet, unsupervised by anyone. These seem like trivial pursuits in today's society, but at the time they represented immense deviations from current practice, and Bharati adhered to them with an iron will. In doing so, of course, he set an example for his fellow man, which they may or may not have appreciated at the time, which many of them may not have even recognized or wanted to recognize. Just as importantly, though, Bharati set an example for future generations, for us today. This wonderful essay, The Place of Woman, is such a rich example of Bharati's writing. It contains so many ideas that might seem rather disparate at first glance: women's freedom, art and culture, war, and of course peace. It is clear that he sees human culture primarily as a product of peace, and that he also sees peace as the ultimate end goal of human civilization itself. It is the slow, patient process carried forward painstakingly over countless generations by which the human race has moved gradually, almost imperceptibly, and yet, I think Bharati would say, inexorably and inevitably away from rule by violence and towards a sense of nobler truths, towards a higher sense of our own identity as beings on planet Earth in this world. As the poet of womankind, as women's champion, Bharati was also fundamentally the poet of peace. How many more generations will it take for us to approach his vision?